You're lying on a hospital gurney, bleeding internally, minutes away from emergency surgery. Your hands shake as you dial your parents, begging them to pick up your 4-year-old twins just for one night. And they say no. Not because they can't, but because they have theater tickets. Then your phone buzzes with a group text. You're exhausting. Figure it out like you always do. That's when you realize the surgery isn't the biggest thing you're about to survive. My name is Emma Carter. I am 33, and a nurse in Boston, and a single mother to twins Lily and Noah. If you're imagining someone with perfect organization and endless patience, stop right there. I'm the mom who keeps emergency granola bars buried in her purse, writes reminders on her hand, and has mastered the art of smiling even when my chest feels like it's collapsing. Because in my family, I learned early that falling apart wasn't an option. In the Carter household, love came with an invisible ranking system. Nobody announced it officially. No chart hung on the refrigerator declaring here's how much affection each child receives. But you didn't need documentation. You could feel it. My older sister Brooke was the star beautiful, charismatic, magnetic. The kind of person who could walk into a room and command attention without trying. She was my mother's favorite story to tell at every gathering. Brooke was walking for 10 months. Brooke had the most adorable smile. Brooke is just special. And then there was me, Emma. I wasn't the story. I was the footnote. The afterthought, and Emma's doing fine to mention as an obligation. My parents didn't hate me. That's what made everything so confusing. They hugged me. They fed me. They showed up to some school events. But the warmth they gave Brooke, that unconditional, glowing affection, that wasn't something I received. With me, love came with conditions. Be helpful, easy, quite didn't create problems. Brooke cried. My mother soothed her with gentle words and warm embraces. When I cried, my mother got irritated. You're too sensitive. Emma, stop overreacting. Why do you always make things so difficult? So I learned to be low maintenance. I learned to swallow disappointment like it was normal. I learned to say I'm fine so automatically that even I started believing it even when I absolutely wasn't. And my parents loved that version of me. The version who didn't need anything. The version who never asked. The version who could always handle it. That phrase, you can handle it, followed me into adulthood like a curse disguised as a compliment. It sounds supportive until you realize it's what people say when they've decided your needs don't matter. The first time my father asked me for money, I was 25. I had just completed nursing school and landed a job at a hospital that paid decent enough for a tiny apartment and crushing student loan payments, but definitely not support to households. Dad called late one night. His voice sounded tense, embarrassed in a way I'd never heard before. He said carefully, we're in a little financial bind. The mortgage is due. This is just temporary. My heart immediately clenched with concern. How much do you need? $2,000, he said quickly. I hate asking you. Your mother's stressed about this, and Brooke has been going through a lot. There it was. Brooke always somehow woven into the equation. I sent the money immediately. Because they were my parents. Because I was raised to believe that family loyalty meant sacrifice. Because I thought that helping them would finally make me feel included. 1 month became 3. 3 became just until things stabilize. Then it transformed into insurance premiums. Then car repairs. Then Brooke needs help with her business idea. I kept paying. Not because I was wealthy, I absolutely wasn't, but because every time I even hesitated, my mother would turn cold. You're really going to let us struggle? She'd say, her tone making me feel like a villain. And my father would take the softer approach. Emma, you know we've always been there for you. Which wasn't true. but it was said with such confidence that it made me question my own reality. So I paid. I didn't tell anyone for a long time. It felt embarrassing, like I was funding a relationship I hadn't earned for free. Eventually, I set up automatic transfers because it was easier than having the same uncomfortable conversation every month. It felt like paying a subscription fee just to keep the peace. Here's the thing. My parents weren't poor. My father had taken early retirement at 56. My mother did part-time work whenever she felt like it. They weren't starving or struggling to survive. They were just accustomed to being supported. And I was accustomed to being used. Then I met Ryan. He was charming in that effortless way that makes you feel chosen, funny, confident, attentive. He made me feel like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. When I discovered I was pregnant, it was a shock. Twins. 2 tiny heartbeats flickering on a screen. The doctor smiled like it was a blessing. I cried in the car afterward, not because I wasn't happy, but because I was terrified of doing it alone, even though I didn't know yet that I would be. Ryan promised me he'd stay. He promised we'd be a team, partners in this unexpected adventure. He stayed. Until my belly grew large, my anxiety became real, and the responsibility stopped feeling romantic. At 22 weeks pregnant, after an argument about finances and timing and his freedom, he packed a bag and said simply, "I'm not ready for this." Then he walked out like we were merely canceling dinner plans. He didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He didn't create dramatic scenes. He just left. I called my mother from the bathroom floor that night. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I couldn't breathe properly. Her response? "Well, maybe you should have been more careful," she said flatly. No comfort. No, "Are you okay?" No maternal warmth. Just judgment. My father's response was worse because it sounded kind. "Emma, you're strong. You'll figure it out." And there it was again, that phrase that had haunted my entire life. You'll figure it out. And I did figure it out. I worked overtime shifts until my feet ached. I saved every possible dollar. I prepared the nursery alone. I attended birthing classes alone. I went to every prenatal appointment alone. My parents showed up to the hospital for the birth, took pictures, posted them proudly on Facebook, and left after exactly 1 hour because Brooke needed them. But those automatic transfers, those never stopped. Even while I was bleeding postpartum, sleep deprived beyond comprehension, learning how to keep 2 tiny humans alive on no sleep, I was still paying my parents' bills every single month. Because that's what the responsible one does, right? My grandfather, Harold Carter, was the only person in my family who ever made me feel truly seen. He had been a judge retired by the time I reached high school. He carried himself with calm authority, not loud or dramatic, just steady, like an anchor. When I was a child, he asked me real questions. What do you want, Emma? What feels fair to you? What are you tolerating that you shouldn't? When I got accepted into nursing school, Grandpa hugged me tight and said, "You worked for that. Not good job. Not that's practical. Not great. Now you can help the family. Just you worked for that." He came to see the twins when they were born, held Lily like she was made of precious glass, made Noah grip his finger, and laughed with pure joy. My mother acted annoyed by his visit. He didn't have to drive all this way, she said dismissively. Grandpa looked at her like she was speaking complete nonsense. "She's my granddaughter," he said firmly. Of course I drove. After that visit, my parents kept their distance between us. They always had reasons we couldn't visit him. Always excuses. Always "will go soon." Soon it never came. But Grandpa texted me sometimes. Short messages. Simple but meaningful. "How are the kids? You eating enough? Call me when you can." Those messages felt like oxygen in a suffocating room. It happened on a Tuesday evening after a brutal 12-hour shift. I was driving home on the Mass Pike, thinking about what to cook the twins for dinner, rehearsing daycare pickup times in my head, doing that constant mental juggling every single parent knows intimately. I remember seeing a green light. I remember moving forward and then impact. A truck ran the red light and hit my driver's side door hard enough to spin my entire car. Glass exploded everywhere. Metal screamed. My head slammed back against the headrest. When I regained consciousness, I was in an ambulance. A paramedic leaned over me, his voice calm but urgent. "Emma, can you hear me? You're bleeding internally. We're taking you to emergency surgery, bleeding internally." Those words made my stomach drop with terror. And then my mind immediately jumped to the twins. Lily and Noah were with my babysitter, Mrs. Kim, who was amazing and reliable and 70 years old. She couldn't stay late. She had her own health issues. I checked the time through blurry vision. 6:50 p.m. Mrs. Kim left at 8 p.m. sharp. That gave me just over 1 hour to find someone to care for my children. My hands shook violently as I grabbed my phone. I called my mother first. No answer. I called my father. He picked up on the third ring, sounding annoyed at the interruption. "Emma, what is it?" "We're about to head out." "Dad," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady through the pain. "I've been in a serious car accident. I'm in an ambulance right now. They're taking me to emergency surgery. I need you and Mom to pick up Lily and Noah. Please." Silence on the other end. Then I heard muffled voices. I recognized my mother's tone, sharp, irritated. Brooke's laugh floating in the background. Dad came back to the phone. "We can't." I blinked in disbelief. "What? We can't," he repeated, as if it was perfectly reasonable. "We have tickets tonight. Your mother has been looking forward to this show for months." My pain spiked sharply. My vision blurred at the edges. I forced the words out. "Dad, I'm bleeding internally. They're taking me into surgery, please." My mother suddenly shouted loud enough that I heard her clearly through the phone. "Emma, stop it. You always do this. You always make everything into a crisis. It is a crisis," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Brooke's voice floated in, amused and casual. "Tell her to hire a nanny. She has money." I almost laughed at the bitter irony because yes, I had money. Money that had been going directly to them for 8 years. My phone buzzed with notifications. Family group chat. My mother's message. "You are exhausted. Figure it out like you always do." My father's message. "Stop punishing us for having plans." Then Brooke. That stupid little upside down emoji. I stared at the screen, feeling something inside me go completely quiet. Not sadness, not rage. Something colder. A realization. If I died on that operating table tonight, they would still insist I was being dramatic. I looked at the paramedic with tears in my eyes. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Can you take a screenshot?" I asked him. He glanced at my phone screen. His expression changed completely from professional distance to genuine disgust. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I absolutely can." At the hospital, they rushed me through intake. 4 lines inserted. Emergency scans. A surgeon explaining risks in that practiced calm voice doctors use when they're trying not to terrify you. I barely heard him because my brain was stuck on one overwhelming question. Where are my children going to go? I called an emergency childcare service from my hospital bed, hands still shaking. The woman on the line was kind, professional, completely unfazed by crisis situations. 2 children, age 4, overnight care, emergency situation. Yes, we can absolutely do it. It cost triple the normal rate. I paid anyway without hesitation. Because my kids deserve safety, even if my parents didn't care enough to provide it. Then my surgeon said, "We're taking you now." And that's when Grandpa Harold walked into my hospital room. I didn't call him. I couldn't even think straight enough to dial. But there he was, Harold Carter, standing in my hospital room like he absolutely belonged there. His experienced eyes took in everything at once, my pale face, the 4 lines, the panic in my eyes, my phone on the bed with those devastating messages still visible on the screen. He picked up my phone without asking. "Read the messages," and his jaw tightened with controlled anger. "Who said this?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. "My mom," I whispered. "And Dad." "And Brooke." Grandpa exhaled slowly. Not dramatic. Controlled, like a judge maintaining composure. Then he looked directly at me and said 3 words, "Print every receipt." I frowned through my pain and fear. "Grandpa, I don't want a fight with them." He leaned closer, his voice gentle but absolutely firm. "Emma," he said, "you've been avoiding a fight for years. And they've been fighting you anyway quietly. With guilt, with entitlement, with lies." He squeezed my shoulder with grandfatherly warmth. "You focus on living. I'll handle the truth." Then the nurses wheeled my gurney toward the operating room. As the doors swung shut behind me, I heard Grandpa say, calm as a courtroom, "Don't worry, Emma. I'm here now." The surgery lasted for excruciating hours. When I woke up, pain hit me like fire spreading through my entire abdomen. My mouth was dessert dry. My body felt like it had been stitched together with barbed wire. But I was alive. The recovery nurse told me they'd stopped the internal bleeding just in time, that I'd likely been minutes away from something catastrophically worse. I asked about my kids immediately. She showed me photos the overnight caregiver had sent. Lily sleeping peacefully while hugging her stuffed bunny. Noah drooling into a pillow. Both safe and cared for. Complete. Strangers kept my babies safe while my parents sat in VIP theater seats. That truth made me physically sick. I spent 5 days recovering in that hospital. Not one phone call from my mother. Not one text from my father. Not one "Are you okay?" from anyone except Grandpa. On day 3 of recovery, Grandpa visited. He brought homemade soup, a soft cardigan, and a folder. He placed it on my hospital tray table and opened it. Carefully. Inside was a simple checklist. Written in his precise handwriting, screenshot the messages, download complete bank statements list. Every payment with exact dates and amounts, print everything down, not argue, let facts speak at the bottom. He'd written one powerful line. "You are not cruel for stopping the leak. You are wise." That night, alone in my hospital room, I opened my banking app with shaking hands. 8 years of automatic transfers stared back at me. Mortgage assistance, health, insurance premiums. Car, repairs, emergency expenses. Brooks, business support. I created a spreadsheet. Every single payment, every date, every amount. The total made me nauseous. $334,000, $334,000 I had sent to people who couldn't even pick up my children during a medical emergency. I canceled every single automatic payment. Then I blocked their phone numbers. It felt clean, like finally turning off a machine that had been draining me silently in the background for nearly a decade. 2 weeks after surgery, I was home, moving slowly, still sore, still healing. The twins were coloring at the kitchen table. Lily hummed a made-up song. Noah lined up his toy cars in perfect rows. There was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Grandpa holding a small paper bag containing 2 pastries, a toy police car for Noah, and a princess sticker set for Lily. He smiled at the children. then turned to me with serious eyes. How are you really? He asked. I hesitated, then answered honestly, tired. He nodded like that was the most truthful answer possible. Then he pulled out an elegant envelope. An invitation. Judge Harold Carter's 75th birthday dinner. Private room at upscale restaurant. Family requested to attend. Me stomach tightened immediately. They'll be there. They will. Grandpa confirmed calmly. I swallowed hard. Grandpa, I don't want to ruin your special night. He looked at me with those wise, experienced eyes. Emma, he said firmly, truth doesn't ruin nights. Lies do. He pointed to my folder sitting on the kitchen counter, my meticulously documented receipts. Bring it, he said, and bring your spine. The restaurant was the kind of upscale place with soft golden lighting and expensive silverware. A private room in the back held around 30 family members seated at round tables, covered in white linen. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing dramatic or attention-seeking. I didn't want spotlight, I wanted peace. The twins stayed with a professional sitter in the restaurant's lounge area, personally vetted by Grandpa, because he didn't trust anyone in my family to handle children responsibly anymore. When I walked into that private room, my parents noticed immediately. My mother Karen froze mid-laughed. My father Richard tightened his jaw. Brooke smiled like she was stepping onto a stage. Brooke glided over first. All fake warmth. Emma, she said sweetly, I'm so glad you could make it. We were worried about you. I met her eyes directly. Were you? Her smile flickered for half a second. Then she leaned in close and whispered like a threat wrapped in sugar. Don't make tonight about you. Grandpa deserves better. I nodded. I completely agree. She looked relieved, as if she'd successfully managed me. Then she walked away confidently. Dinner started with speeches. Various relatives praised Grandpa's distinguished career, his fairness, his integrity as a judge. Grandpa listened politely, hands folded, eyes calm and observant. Halfway through the meal, my father suddenly stood up and tapped his wine glass with a fork. The room fell quiet. Before we continue, he said with practiced warmth, I just want to address something important. My stomach dropped. He turned toward me with a rehearsed sad expression. As many of you know, Emma has been through a difficult medical event recently, Dad said with apparent concern. She's under tremendous stress, and since her surgery, she's been distant from the family. My mother dabbed dramatically at her eyes with a napkin. We've tried reaching out to her, she said, voice breaking, but she won't respond to us. Brooke sighed dramatically for effect. It's actually scary, she added. She's saying we abandoned her, which just isn't true at all. Several relatives murmured sympathetically. I felt that old familiar panic, raising the desperate urge to explain myself, to defend, to prove I wasn't crazy or dramatic. Then I looked at Grandpa. He didn't look surprised by their performance. He looked ready. Grandpa set down his fork. The sound was quiet, but absolutely final. He stood slowly, commanding immediate attention. Richard, he said calmly, thank you for your concern. Dad nodded, looking relieved. Of course, Dad. We just want the family to understand the situation. The truth. Grandpa finished firmly. Dad's confident smile faltered. Grandpa's voice stayed calm, that courtroom level, steady tone that demanded attention. I have a question, he said. Who has been paying your mortgage for the past 8 years? A ripple of confusion moved through the room like a wave. My father blinked. What? Grandpa didn't blink back. Your mortgage. Your insurance premiums. Your emergencies. Who has been paying for them? My mother's face went pale as snow. Dad stammered. We handle our own bills. Grandpa nodded once. Slowly. Do you? Then he reached for a folder on the table. My folder. My receipts. My truth. He held it up for everyone to see. I have bank records, Grandpa said clearly. Dates, amounts, a complete timeline. My mother's hands began trembling visibly. Harold, please. Grandpa looked at her with absolute calm. Karen, you had your chance to say please when your daughter was begging for help before emergency surgery. The room inhaled collectively as one shocked breath. Grandpa opened the folder and began reading, like he was presenting evidence in court. Mortgage support, $2,450 per month for 96 months. Audible gasps around the room. Health insurance premiums, $780 monthly for 7 years. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through relatives. Car repairs, home repairs, various unexpected emergencies. Approximately $38,000. He flipped a page deliberately. Financial support for Brooks' business ventures, $15,000. Brooks stood abruptly, voice sharp with panic. That's not. Grandpa raised one authoritative hand. Sit down, he said. She sat immediately. Grandpa closed the folder with finality. Total amount, he said, letting it land, approximately $334,000. Silence. Dropped like a heavy curtain. My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish. My mother started crying, not delicate tears, but panicked, desperate ones. My dad finally found words. Emma offered to help, he said quickly, defensively. We never forced her. Grandpa nodded calmly. No one is saying you forced her, Richard. He took a deliberate step forward. I'm saying you accepted, he continued, repeatedly. 4 years. And then you called her a burden at the precise moment she needed you most. My mother shook her head wildly. We didn't know it was that serious. Grandpa tilted his head slightly. Did you ask? Devastating silence. Then Grandpa pulled out his phone. There's one more piece of evidence, he said quietly. My stomach tightened. He read slowly, clearly, letting every word sink in. You are exhausted. Figure it out like you always do. He looked up at the stunned faces. Sent while she was being prepared for emergency surgery. Then he read the next message. Stop punishing us for having plans. He paused. Then read the final one. A sound moved through the room. Disgust, disbelief, horror. Someone whispered audibly. That's absolutely evil. An aunt who had always defended my mother stared at her plate like she couldn't swallow. My father stood abruptly, face red. This is completely out of context. Grandpa's voice stayed calm, but sharp as a blade. There is no context. That makes abandoning your child before emergency surgery acceptable. My father's face turned darker red. We didn't know it was serious. Grandpa looked at him with devastating calm. She told you she was bleeding internally and going into surgery. My father's mouth opened, and nothing came out. Grandpa turned to address the entire room. I'm not asking anyone to choose sides, he said. I am asking you to stop believing a story that has been convenient for the wrong people. Then he looked at me with gentle encouragement. Emma, he said softly. Do you want to say anything? I hadn't planned to speak, but for the first time in my entire life, the room wasn't looking at me like I was a problem. They were looking at me like a human being who deserved to be heard. I stood on shaking legs. My voice trembled at first, then steadied with each word. I didn't come here for revenge, I said clearly. I came because Grandpa invited me. I looked directly at my parents. For years, you told me I was strong, I said, that I could handle everything. I swallowed the lump in my throat, but I didn't handle everything because I was strong. I handled it because I wasn't given another choice. My mother sobbed louder. My father stared at the tablecloth. I paid your bills because I thought love worked like that. I continued, voice cracking. I thought if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, You'd finally show up for me the way you showed up for Brooke. A single tear slid down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. But in that hospital bed, I said, bleeding and alone, I finally understood. I paused to let it land. To you. I wasn't a daughter, I said quietly. I was a solution. The room stayed absolutely silent. I'm not sending money anymore, I said clearly. Not because I can't afford it. Because I won't buy love that should have been free. My father's voice cracked desperately. Emma, I'm not finished, I said with surprising calm. I'm not saying you can never be in my life. I continued, but I'm saying this. If you want access to me and my children, you will treat me like a human being, not a wallet, not a solution to your problems. I looked directly at Brooke, and I won't be the scapegoat anymore just so you can stay the favorite. Brooke's face crumpled, genuinely shocked, like she'd never considered there might be consequences. I turned back to the room. If you've ever been the one expected to hold everything together while your needs were ignored, I said, I want you to hear this clearly. Boundaries aren't betrayal. I let that truth land. Sometimes love isn't proven by how much you endure, I said. Sometimes it's proven by what you finally refuse. I sat down. Grandpa lifted his glass high, too. Truth, he said simply, and the applause that followed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, like protection finally arriving. My parents left early that night. No one stopped them. No one ran after them with sympathy or excuses. Brooke stayed frozen for a long while, as if she genuinely didn't know who she was without the family narrative propping her up. Relatives came over to my table in quiet waves. I'm so sorry, one cousin said. We had absolutely no idea. They made it sound like you were just being dramatic. An aunt whispered, I can't believe you carried that burden alone, an uncle muttered, shaking his head. I listened, thanked them sincerely, and felt something strange wash over me. Grief. Not because they apologized, but because I realized how long I'd been invisible, and how many people had unknowingly participated in that invisibility. That night, Grandpa drove me home in comfortable silence. You didn't ruin anything, he told me firmly. They did. Years ago, I stared out the window at passing streetlights. I still feel guilty. Grandpa nodded knowingly. That's because you were trained to feel guilty whenever you stop being useful to them. His voice softened with grandfatherly wisdom. Emma, he said, an apology that comes with conditions isn't an apology. It's a negotiation. I swallowed hard. So what do I do now? You build a life where your children never learn that love must be earned, he said. That's what you do. 3 weeks later, my Aunt Denise called with an update. They're panicking, she said. They didn't realize how financially dependent they'd become. I wasn't surprised. When the mortgage payment didn't come through, Denise continued, your father called the bank and insisted it was a mistake. I exhaled slowly. Of course he did. They're talking about selling the house, she added. Your mother is blaming you for everything. I looked across my living room at Lily and Noah playing peacefully on the floor. Lily was carefully braiding a doll's hair. Noah was lining up toy cars in perfect rows. They were safe. They were laughing. They were loved. I didn't do this to them, I said quietly but firmly. Denise's voice softened with understanding. Exactly. You stopped doing it for them. That night, I opened my budget and created a new account with a label that made me smile. Lily plus Noah College Fund. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't revenge. It was responsibility finally serving the right people. 2 months after the birthday dinner, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something made me answer. Emma. Brooke's voice sounded completely different. Smaller. Vulnerable. Why are you calling? I asked neutrally. Please don't hang up. she said quickly. I know I don't deserve it. I didn't rescue her from the uncomfortable silence. I let her sit in it. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. I waited, saying nothing, for the emoji. She said, voice cracking, for laughing, for making you feel like you were nothing. I didn't soften yet. Go on. Brooke inhaled shakily. I didn't know you were paying the entire mortgage, she said. Not all of it. I swear I didn't know the full extent. I believed that partially. Brooke had always avoided uncomfortable details like debts and consequences. But I knew you were always the one who fixed everything, she continued. And I liked it, because it meant I never had to grow up. I never had to be responsible. That brutal honesty hit harder than any apology could. I don't know who I am without being the favorite, she admitted quietly. I exhaled slowly. Then figure it out, I said firmly. Build a life that doesn't require someone else to be smaller so you can feel bigger. She cried softly on the other end. Do you hate me? She asked in a small voice. I thought about all the years. The silence when I needed support. The laughter when I was bleeding. I don't hate you, I said truthfully. But I don't trust you yet either, she whispered. That's fair. Before she hung up, she said quietly, your kids are really sweet. They are, I replied. And they will never learn that love has to be purchased or earned through sacrifice. Then I ended the call. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reality finally, honestly arriving. 4 years. I genuinely believe family was a transactional contract. You give everything. You sacrifice constantly. You stay quiet about continued 9:07 a.m. needs. And if you do it long enough, maybe they'll love you the way you desperately need. But here's what I learned painfully, but necessarily. Love is not a transaction. Care is not a reward for good behavior. And loyalty should never cost you your dignity. When I stopped paying, I didn't become cruel or heartless. I became honest. I used to think boundaries were walls that separated me from love. Now I understand boundaries are doors. They show people exactly how to enter your life. Respectfully. And if someone refuses to enter with respect, that's not your failure. That's your answer. These days, Grandpa Harold picks up Lily and Noah every Sunday. Ice cream adventures, parks, little explorations. He listens to their stories. Like every single word matters profoundly. My apartment is smaller than my parents' house ever was, but it's peaceful. It's genuinely mine. No one here calls me exhausting. No one here treats me like a burden. And my children are growing up in a home where love doesn't have a price tag. If you've ever been the responsible one, the person who keeps everyone else afloat while your own needs get completely ignored, I want you to know something. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's survival. And if the people who raised you call your self-respect disrespect, then maybe they were never actually respecting you in the first place. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are not obligated to fund someone else's life at the expense of your own. You are not cruel for having boundaries. You are wise. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're self-preservation. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own exploitation. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been taken for granted by the people who should cherish you most, know that you're not alone. Your needs matter. Your pain is valid. And you deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. Choose yourself. Build your boundaries. Protect your peace. Because the people who truly love you will understand. And the people who don't, they were never your responsibility to fix. If it helped you even a little, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. I'll see you in the next story.